So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our viewers and listeners. So today, myself, Paul Northey, business owner, and Peter Coxon, also a business owner, but also has a focus on organizational development and psychology. I'm going to talk about what we see as the 5 steps of leadership for the new era. So in the last podcast, we talked mainly about an introduction and what we were going to talk about. And today is really the first focus topic, which is ultimately the big picture. So, Peter, maybe you could give your views and perspectives on how the big picture influences leadership in moving forward for many people in business at the moment.
Yes, thanks, Paul. So yes, big picture very much about looking forward, and that's been quite difficult for many leaders in 2020. So much of our bandwidth has been used up just focusing on the now, dealing with the crises, making the urgent decisions, that we've taken our eye off the important but not so urgent stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, though, part of the big picture requires us to look at what's important and urgent. And I think some of the organizations that are coming through better than others have been doing that. They've combined that approach. I'll say a little bit more about that later.
Yeah.
But yes, so facing the future, getting your forward-thinking brain in gear. I suppose the first question is, so how do the new challenges that we're facing affect your organization's mission? And what the organization is here for? Is that still fit for purpose? But it's also been a time to think about your own sense of purpose. I think 2020 has allowed us, or maybe forced us, to stop and reflect, to stop and review, to stop and reconsider the core issues in our life. So what is important to you? How do you want to live your life? What have you learned from the time through lockdown and beyond? What changes do you want to make to your own life? Many people have been reviewing that. A number of people, as a silly example, have been selling up and moving out of the city because they recognize that they want to live a different kind of life. So there's been this radical rethinking of lots of people's individual lives.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the cyclic treadmill kind of ground to a halt for a period, and the reality of life and home life and the balance between home life and work became very much a clear focus. Yeah, and no doubt things will not be any different. I have several conversations with companies that have sold up their offices and headquarters. They literally are going to go to become virtual companies in terms of their physical existence, and they will meet maybe once a month for a social event or a team meeting. Things will change moving forward, and I think this also influences people's personal journeys themselves, and getting the balance between the big picture and the mission for work and your own personal mission, which sometimes can take a back seat on the treadmill, is fairly critical. Yeah,
I think that's right, Paul. So I think it's an opportunity to retune into the question, what are you here for? And what's the purpose of your life? What's the star that guides you? What's important to you? What are your values? You kind of know what they are. We can sometimes lose sight of them if we're not careful. But how have your own priorities evolved this year? And what's your own vision then going forward for your own life? What do you want people to remember you for when you leave your current role? When you leave your current organization? When you retire? On your deathbed?
I think you're right. It's
on your deathbed, Paul. What do you want people to remember you for?
Yeah, it's ultimately your legacy, right, Peter? So what are you actually going to leave behind? A bank account full of money, a bank account full of memories, a bank account full of experiences, and no doubt when you look backwards, I know which one most people would choose. Yeah.
Exactly. So now's an opportunity, perhaps better than ever, to stop and reflect and plan ahead rather than waiting till it's all too late.
Yeah.
So the reflection on your life and the way you want to live it going forward, and then in the light of that reflection also, so what's your vision for your organization? And how might this have shifted compared to, say, a year ago? How have you engaged your team to check and to test and maybe refine your organization's vision? How well have you connected with your people to ensure that they share this sense of the way forward, this sense of a shared image of success for the company? Now, appraising your vision and your erstwhile strategy and your business plans may already have resulted in some minor tweaks or some major reviews or innovatively different ways of moving forward. You mentioned the virtual organizations that have emerged in some places.
Yeah.
So for some people, their plans have been blown out of the water.
Yeah.
And yet for others, they've seen opportunities to grasp and they've moved forward at pace.
Yeah, with all this turbulence, there's often clear opportunities for people that are prepared to pivot and change direction quickly. Yeah, and to do that, you have to take your team, your organization, your business with you in this, let's say, maybe a brave direction, but ultimately staying on the same journey, on the same path will lead to failure. Yeah.
I think that's absolutely right. One of the key words that you see in all the literature at the moment is about agility.
Yeah.
You need to be agile and responding to the changes that have been imposed upon you. We weren't planning for these changes. And you need, if you can, to work with your people to craft a refined and a shared image of success. And agility is an easy word to use, but what does it actually mean? There's some evidence emerging already that the companies that seem to be thriving more than others at the moment are doing it for one of, and possibly both of two reasons. One is they might just happen to be in the right situation at the right time, that they've taken advantage. The delivery companies, the retail that have been able to go online, just so happens that they were able to take advantage of the new opportunities. For others, it's about the speed of response to the changes and the challenges that have been imposed. So how agile have you been individually and collectively to bring about the changes you've needed to? Some organizations are just beginning to play catch up, and some, frankly, have not. They've slipped into victim mode and thinking, what can I do?
But I guess the ultimate driver for innovation and for change is, as a business, is your revenue and your profit falling off a cliff. Yeah. And then ultimately you either do something about it and look at what can you achieve in this new world, in the bigger picture. What do you have? What potentially you might have to leave the past behind. You might be a bricks and mortar outfit. You might have to become an online company. You might suddenly have to deliver rather than expect customers to walk through your door. The products mix in terms of what will sell in the future will change based on, I'm sure some sectors have had fantastic 12 months, yeah, and others have had a desperate time, yeah, and ultimately those companies struggling, which there are a lot of high street companies that are really having a real horrid time, have to reflect and say, well, this is really an acceleration of what would have happened over maybe several years, and maybe the management assumed that they would have the time and the bandwidth to slowly change, and now this almost like an event from space has happened, and now they have to do it immediately. Yeah? There's no option. Yeah?
I think that's absolutely right. So we touched on how some organizations have kind of got stuck a bit in victim mode.
Yeah.
Certainly from my own primary research with SMEs, 50 to 60% of them are focused, as you just touched on the financial side of it. How are we going to manage our budget? Reducing costs. The big organizations are having to do that big time, making difficult decisions.
Yeah.
But that's still focusing in their mind. But I want to bring us back to a little bit more of the big picture and refer briefly, if I may, to a man who's been a big influence on my life, posthumously actually, a gentleman called Commander James Stockdale, who was probably one of the highest ranking military officers in the American Air Force during the Vietnam War. He went about what he probably shouldn't have done. He managed by wandering about. He went on a sortie with his people that he shouldn't have done. He should have stayed at home. But he got shot down on one of those sorties, and he was taken very quickly into the Hanoi Hilton, where he discovered his men in disarray, all very much in victim mode, suffering from the sudden change that they were thrust into, and the traumas of which make 2020 pale into complete insignificance. What he did was he managed to get them to somehow be much more likely to survive. Actually, the people who were failing to thrive the most were the optimists who would say, we'll be all right, we'll get out by Christmas, they'll rescue us by Easter. And as Christmas and Easter came, and we weren't secured, then they started to fall apart. I'm hearing a number of people in the media and in my own cohort of clients talk about, oh, now we've got the vaccine, come the spring, it'll be back to the, albeit new normal.
Yeah.
And I think things will continue to be challenging. So when they debriefed James Stockdale, which they did extensively, what they discovered is how he'd gone about securing his people. And they assigned to him, or ascribed to him, the Stockdale paradox, which briefly says, on the one hand, have an unerring belief that you can and you will prevail. And on the other hand, confront the brutal facts of the reality. Okay, so we can and we will get through this, and we've got to tackle these harsh, realistic facts that we're facing. And that speaks to me at this time, perhaps as much as ever. So
yeah.
I just want to say then, this in summary, if you like, communicating with your colleagues, with your employees about the big picture and the future big picture is vital. And of course, it's more difficult than normal for many, many organizations. You've got a kind of a hybrid leadership at the moment where some people are face-to-face in work and some are working from home. So it's critical that your communications about this big picture are effective and they serve the big purpose.
Yeah, I agree.
There was some research done that I was reading only this morning from the City and Guilds, and it said from 3,500 people, 36% said our leaders are failing to demonstrate some of the soft skills like empowering us and motivating us. 31% said they're having insufficient empathy and emotional intelligence. 34% said they're not good enough at problem solving. Gosh, we need to be able to do that at the moment. 29% said their organizational skills are lacking. So these important elements at the moment, more than ever, communicating with our people, managing our people, building the relationships, that whole kind of interpersonal side of life. The leaders that are showing those skills are the leaders gaining in respect and gaining traction.
Yeah. So I think that really brings us to a nice conclusion for this podcast video session. Next week, we discuss about using your head. So all 1.3 kilograms of it, as we discussed in the last previous episode. So look forward to speaking to you, Peter, and thank you for your insightful thoughts on what is ultimately the big picture and how leaders can need to step back and ultimately take their business picture and their own personal picture and try to put something together which is coherent, which allows them to really progress moving forward. So thanks again, Peter. We look forward to your comments and your views next week, where ultimately using your head will be the primary focus of the conversation. Thanks again.